Usually when you picture a person just like fiercely defending their entire worldview, you imagine a debate stage or something.
Right, yeah, like a podium, a microphone, maybe a really passionate speech.
Exactly. But sometimes that defense looks entirely different. Sometimes it looks like a 59-year-old man standing in the middle of a brightly lit electronics store, just violently shaking a white box at a terrified 20-something clerk.
Oh, yeah, demanding to know exactly where the keyboard pulls out.
Yes, the classic standoff over the iPad. Or, as the protagonist in today's source material stubbornly insists on calling it, the OPAD.
Right. He completely refuses to accept it.
He's telling this clerk, who, by the way, clearly just wants to go on his lunch break, that he wants a normal bloody computer, not an OPAD, not a MacBook.
And when the poor guy tries to explain that the screen actually is the keyboard, well, to this man, that's like suggesting you should drive a car by licking the steering wheel. I mean, it completely defies his logic.
It really does. So, welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are exploring excerpts from Fredrik Backman's novel, A Man Called Ove. And looking at this initial interaction, I mean, it would be incredibly easy to write this off as just your standard grumpy old man trope.
Oh, totally. It's comedic, it's a bit curmudgeonly, it's a very familiar setup.
But that surface level reading is exactly what we want to look past today. To really get to the heart of what this material is doing, we are going to adopt the deeply humanistic sort of intellectual lens of the mid-20th century literary critic Alfred Kazin.
Which is such a fascinating way to frame this.
I think so too. But okay, let's unpack this right away. Because for anyone diving into this who maybe isn't familiar with Kazin's work, what is the core of his critical philosophy? Like, how does it apply to a guy yelling at a store clerk about an iPad?
That's a great question. So Alfred Kazin championed this idea that literature's highest purpose is to explore the struggle of the ordinary individual, someone just trying to maintain their fundamental human dignity in a world that is becoming increasingly mechanized and bureaucratic.
Right, a world that's indifferent.
Exactly. Kazin argued that modern society often strips away our humanity by treating us as just mere data points or, consumers. So through a Kazin-esque lens, true heroism isn't about slaying dragons.
It's about fighting to remain human.
Precisely. When we apply that to Of, we realize this isn't just a story about a technophobe struggling with a touchscreen.
It's a defense mechanism.
It really is. This is a profound exploration of the isolation of grief, the desperate struggle for personal dignity in a rapidly changing society, and the messy, just entirely unexpected salvation that you can really only find in community.
Because Of is a man fiercely defending a world built on tangible skills, clear rules, and unyielding principles, right? He is up against a modern era that he feels has made his entire existence completely obsolete.
Yeah, and that brings us to how he actually lives his day-to-day life.
Oh man, going through the source material, I noticed the text spends a massive amount of time detailing his morning routine. It felt almost obsessive, frankly, like what is he actually doing out there in the neighborhood at 5:45 in the morning?
Well, he is basically patrolling the architecture of his own isolation. Ovi constructs these formidable physical and emotional walls around himself through these incredibly rigid routines.
Right.
So he wakes up at exactly 5:45 a.m., not 5:46, not 5:50.
And he does this without an alarm clock.
Yeah, because he never owned one. His internal clock is flawless. Then he brews his coffee, and it has to be done exactly the same way every single day. 1 scoop per cup and 1 extra scoop for the pot. No variations allowed.
Because if you use a pod machine, you've somehow lost your moral center.
To his mind, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, people simply don't know how to brew proper coffee anymore, just like they don't know how to write with a pen.
So true.
After coffee, he puts on his wooden clogs and goes outside for his inspection. He physically kicks the traffic signs on his street just to ensure they haven't become loose overnight.
It's a casual morning kick.
Right. And he meticulously checks the trash room to guarantee the recycling is sorted correctly. He even fishes a rogue metal lid out of the glass bin, muttering about the incompetents who live around him.
Of course. And then the license plates.
Oh, yeah. Finally, he writes down the license plates in the guest parking area to verify that no one has overstayed their 24-hour limit.
I was thinking about this morning inspection, and I came up with an analogy. It feels exactly like a medieval knight meticulously walking the parapets of his castle walls.
Oh, that's really good.
Right. Because to the outside world, to the neighbor jogging by or the person casually throwing away a glass bottle, it looks like an aggressive, hostile assertion of authority.
Yeah, it looks like he's picking a fight.
Exactly. But a knight on a wall isn't attacking. It's actually a purely defensive act. It's a desperate attempt to look for breaches, to keep the unpredictable, chaotic, modern world out.
That analogy perfectly captures the psychology at play here. And consider who he views as the invading army. His intense disdain is entirely directed at modern men.
Oh, IT consultant.
Yes, he rails against 31-year-old IT consultants walking around in tight trousers. He despises people who drive Audis, like his neighbor Anders, and he genuinely distrusts men who drink espresso.
Because to Ave, these aren't just aesthetic annoyances.
No, they are symptoms of a society that has lost its foundation. He's deeply offended by a world where nobody knows how to use an anchor bolt in concrete or how to bleed a radiator or how to properly back up a trailer.
Because in that world, his own value drops to zero.
That is the crux of the Kazin-esque struggle for dignity right there. We live in an environment where people buy absolutely everything pre-made. When a pipe bursts or a tile cracks, they immediately hire a consultant or a contractor.
Right, they just outsource it.
Exactly. So in that environment, of his physical competence, his ability to fix a broken-down truck with nothing but a screwdriver and some gauze tape that is the only currency he has for his self-worth.
And his currency has just experienced hyperinflation. I mean, the excerpts mention he was recently let go from his job, right?
Yeah, he was forced into what the company politely called early retirement. After a third of a century working tirelessly at the exact same job, he was pushed out by a younger management team.
Replaced by a society of white cables and computer screens?
Precisely. So when you view his rigidity through this context, it isn't malice. It isn't just a grumpy guy yelling at kids to get off his lawn. It is a vital protest against what he sees as the unreserved celebration of mediocrity.
It's a man clinging to the edge of his own relevance.
Yes.
But, Ov's Fortress isn't just about keeping the modern world out. It's about preserving the memory of the only thing he actually valued inside it. Because to understand why those castle walls are so high today, we have to understand what happened to the single source of light that used to live inside them.
Which brings us to the profound anatomy of grief and loss that basically underpins his entire existence. Ov's history is essentially defined by a quiet, stoic endurance of tragedy.
He lost his mother at a very young age.
He did. And then his quiet, hard-working railway worker father died tragically when Ove was just 16, struck by a train carriage.
And the inheritance his father leaves him is so sparse. It's just a sob, a rundown house, and a dented wristwatch.
Yeah, very little physically.
But reading through the lines, it seems the real inheritance was a rigid moral code.
The belief that right has to be right. Like when Ove was later accused of theft at the railway company, he didn't scream or shout. He quietly and methodically cleared his name.
And the house, too. When local developers tried to force him out of his father's house to build new developments, he refused to sell.
He chose instead to repair the crumbling structure with his own hands. And when that house mysteriously burned to the ground, likely at the hands of those very developers, honestly, he chose to sleep in his sob rather than yield to them.
I mean, it's a life completely devoid of softness. Until he meets Sanja on a train.
Sanja is the turning point. The text describes her beautifully, wearing red shoes and gold brooch, and the source material delivers one of the most striking lines summarizing their dynamic. It says, "People said Ove saw the world in black and white, but she was color, all the color he had."
Oh, all the color he had. That line just stops you in your tracks.
It really does.
And that the color doesn't last. The excerpts detail a horrific tragedy in Spain. They take a bus tour because Sanja finds buses romantic, and the bus crashes.
It's devastating.
Sanja, who is pregnant at the time, loses the baby and is permanently confined to a wheelchair. And adding insult to unimaginable injury, the local council refuses to build a disabled ramp at the school where she teaches, basically telling her she can never work again.
So Ove takes matters into his own hands. He drives to the school in the middle of the night under the cover of darkness, and he builds the ramp with his bare hands. He forces the world to make space for her.
Which brings us to the present day. Sanja has been dead for 6 months. And Ove isn't just wandering around his empty house feeling sad. He is secretly, methodically planning his own suicide.
Yes.
He's drilling a hole in his living room ceiling to install a hook for a noose, making absolutely sure to use the correct anchor bolt so it will hold his weight perfectly, of course.
Naturally.
And later, he's sitting in his running sob inside a sealed garage waiting for carbon monoxide poisoning. He simply refuses to navigate a world without her.
This extreme reaction to her death reveals the deepest layer of his psychology.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there and push back on this a bit, because when I was reading the sources, this felt like a massive contradiction to me.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, Ove's entire identity is based on self-sufficiency. He prides himself on never being reliant on anyone else. He builds houses, he sleeps in cars, he fights the whole world alone. So why does his wife dying suddenly completely unravel his will to live? Shouldn't a hyper-independent guy be perfectly fine returning to his solitary life?
See, it looks like a contradiction on the surface, but it's actually a brilliant paradox.
Hmm.
What we discover is that Ovi's practical skills, his intense self-sufficiency, they were actually his profound nonverbal language of love.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He didn't just build things for the sake of building them. He built the ramp for her. He fixed broken appliances for her. He went to war with the world for her.
So without her?
Without Sanja, his competence has no recipient. His current isolation isn't the peaceful, self-satisfied solitude of a proudly independent man. It is a waiting room for death. Because if his skills can't protect her, they are entirely useless.
Okay, that reframes everything. He's not trying to kill himself because he's doing it because his machinery has lost its purpose.
Exactly.
But just as Ovi's perfectly executing his plan to exit this black and white world, the chaotic modern world he so utterly despises literally crashes into his front yard.
Quite literally, yes. While he's standing in his living room, perfectly centering his suicide hook, calculating the physics of the drop, he is violently interrupted by the sound of a trailer scraping against the exterior wall of his house.
Enter the new neighbors.
Right.
We meet Parvana, a fiercely pregnant foreign woman, her lanky, completely uncoordinated husband Patrick, and their energetic kids. And they spectacularly interrupt his suicide attempt by failing to back a rented trailer into his driveway.
It's such a great scene.
Ove storms out, absolutely furious. He immediately notes that Patrick has an obvious calcium deficiency and is wearing a non-gender specific cardigan. And he is enraged that this modern man can't perform a basic driving maneuver.
This seemingly comedic interruption acts as a catalyst, though. It pulls Ove out of his internal vacuum and drops him into a much darker systemic conflict. Because interacting with these new neighbors inadvertently pulls him back into the orbit of his former best friend, Rune.
Oh, the history with Rune is fascinating. According to the notes, Ove and Rune were incredibly close when they first moved to the street decades ago. They were like the original rule enforcer.
The neighborhood watch before it was that.
Right. But they fell out over a bitter, year-long rivalry regarding the leadership of the Residents Association, a rivalry that escalated over their choice of cars. Ove drove a Saab, Rune drove a Volvo.
But the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal came when Rune decided to buy a BMW.
A BMW.
To Ove, switching from a Swedish car to a BMW isn't just a consumer choice. It's a moral failing. It's a complete betrayal of loyalty and principle.
But the current crisis supersedes all of that, doesn't it? Because Rune now suffers from severe Alzheimer's. And the municipal authorities, whom Ove simply refers to with chilling detachment as the men in white shirts, they are forcing Rune into a state care facility against the desperate wishes of his wife, Anita.
Yeah, and these men in white shirts are the true antagonists of the story.
I look at them like a modern, sanitized version of a mythological monster, you know? They don't attack with fangs or breathe fire or carry swords. They destroy human lives using paperwork, subclauses, and a chillingly polite, robotic insistence that rules are rules.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize them, especially when we bring Alfred Kazin back into the conversation.
Right, the struggle for dignity.
Exactly. Through Kazin's humanistic lens, the men in white shirts are the embodiment of institutional indifference. They represent the ultimate stripping of human dignity. The system doesn't see Rune as a man with a history, a wife, or a home. It sees him as a logistical problem to be filed away in storage.
And Ove has been at war with these exact types of men his entire life.
Oh, absolutely.
They're the same breed of bureaucrats who denied his house fire claim when he was a young man.
They are the exact same type of men who refused to help Sanja after the bus crash. The ones who coldly told him his wife's teaching career was over because the school couldn't afford a ramp.
And now they're back, just standing in his street, smoking cigarettes, calmly checking their clipboards, telling Ove that Rune is being taken into care, and there is absolutely nothing anyone can do about it.
And by choosing to step in and help his estranged friend, Ove is doing something monumental here. He is waging a proxy war for his own dignity.
Yes.
It's a profound internal realization that human loyalty, shared history, and basic dignity must outweigh municipal clauses. He realizes he has to fight them, not just for Rune, but to prove that humanity still matters.
But Ove, the ultimate lone wolf, quickly hits a wall. He realizes that you cannot defeat an entrenched, faceless institution entirely on your own.
And this is where the narrative shifts to the incredible involuntary power of community.
Involuntary really is the operative word here, right? Ove does not seek out a support system. He is inadvertently dragged back to life by the utter incompetence and persistent neediness of his neighbors.
It is relentless.
It really is. Parvana basically forces him to give her driving lessons because Patrick is apparently too useless behind the wheel. A teenage boy randomly shows up needing Ove to fix a broken bicycle just so he can impress a girl.
And Jimmy.
Right, Jimmy, the overweight young man next door. He insists on joining Ove's highly serious morning inspections to get some exercise. Even a half-frozen, mutilated stray cat absolutely refuses to leave Ove alone, essentially breaking into his house and demanding tuna.
It's so funny, but each of these irritating interruptions is actually a tether pulling him back from the edge of the abyss.
Yeah.
And it all culminates in an incredible triumph of collective action regarding Rune. There is a moment where Ove is utterly defeated. He realizes the men in white shirts have the legal paperwork. He can't punch a piece of paper.
He sits in his hallway, his heart acting up, and begins to cry. The knight has lost the castle.
But Parvana isn't having it. She becomes the general. She rallies the entire neighborhood.
Suddenly, it's Parvana, Patrick, Jimmy, Anders the Audi driver, a young cafe worker named Mirsad, and a journalist named Lena, who, by the way, Ove had actually accidentally locked in a garage earlier in the story.
Such a great detail.
They all band together. They physically blockade the street to prevent the white shirts from taking Rune. They use the journalist to threaten a massive PR nightmare regarding corrupt bureaucratic processes and financial mismanagement within the municipality. And against all odds, they win.
They do. And the epilogue we get fundamentally shifts Ove's legacy. He doesn't die that day in his living room. He lives for several more years. He becomes the neighborhood's reluctant grandfather.
Fixing everyone's floor joists.
Yeah, he furiously assembles their IKEA furniture. He teaches the younger generation how to properly bleed radiators. Until, years later, he passes away peacefully in his sleep.
And the neighborhood's sign that he's gone. His meticulously maintained driveway remains unshoveled in the morning snow.
He leaves behind a diverse, chaotic community that deeply, deeply mourns him.
You know, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Think about the beautiful, tragic irony of this entire character arc. Ove spends the whole story absolutely furious at people who can't do basic things for themselves. But it is precisely their absolute incompetence, their inability to back up a trailer, fix a bike, or navigate life that actually saves his life.
That's so true.
If they had been as capable and self-sufficient as he demanded they be, they would have left him alone, and he would have successfully carried out his suicide plan.
That irony is the ultimate Kazin-style reflection on the human condition, I think. It synthesizes what community actually is. In this story, community isn't presented as some utopian, perfectly harmonious ideal where everyone agrees and respects each other's boundaries.
Definitely not.
No, it is loud, it is disorganized, it is highly inconvenient, and it is deeply, profoundly annoying.
Let me challenge that slightly, though. Are we saying community has to be annoying to be effective? Because that sounds exhausting. Why can't a community just be supportive and peaceful?
Well, because a perfectly peaceful, frictionless community wouldn't have saved a man like O. Peace and quiet are exactly what you find in a graveyard.
Oh, that's a good point.
What Ove needed wasn't polite support. He needed friction. The very friction of that annoying, needy community is the electric shock that jumpstarts his failing heart. By genuinely needing him to solve their problems, they give him a purpose that his isolation and grief had stolen.
They forcefully replace the deafening silence of his empty house with the messy, unavoidable chaos of living.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've explored how a man suffocating in a self-made fortress of strict rules, anchor bolts, and useful tools was brought back from the brink of death by the relentless, chaotic love of a community that simply refused to leave him in peace.
It connects directly to the modern condition we all navigate. Think about your own life. You have likely faced moments where the world feels like it's innovating too fast, making your skills or your perspective feel obsolete.
Yeah, or perhaps you faced moments of profound grief, stress, or burnout that tempt you to pull up the drawbridge and isolate yourself behind your own rigid routines and locked doors.
When things get hard, the first instinct for so many of us is to become the knight on the wall, keeping everyone at a safe distance.
Exactly. But Ove's journey is a vital reminder that salvation rarely looks like peace and quiet. It almost never looks like an empty, perfectly ordered room where no one bothers you.
It usually looks like a highly annoying neighbor knocking on your door at the absolute worst possible time to borrow a ladder.
Which brings us back to where we started. That image of the stubborn 59-year-old man demanding a normal computer in a world of touchscreens, trying so desperately to remain completely self-sufficient and in control.
Right.
It leaves you with a lingering philosophical thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. If our true worth as human beings isn't actually defined by what we can independently achieve, build, or control on our own, could it be that our greatest value actually lies in our vulnerability?
Yeah, and our absolute willingness to be interrupted, deeply needed, and profoundly inconvenienced by the people around us.